technology, energy, diversity, and globalism. This show is Center Stage. I'm your host, Donna Blanchard, proud managing director of Kumukuhua Theater, and we are coming to you live from Pioneer Plaza in the heart of downtown Honolulu, very near Kumukuhua Theater. I'm excited to introduce to you my guest today. Her name is Rachel Funk-Heller, and she has written a new book that is called The Writer's Coloring Book. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Rachel Funk-Heller.
Hi, Donna.
Hi. So thank you so much for coming here and bringing Show and Tell.
Show and Tell. Thanks so much for having me.
As soon as I saw that you had written this, I saw the title of the book, I was immediately intrigued, and I recognized as an artist who works in administration of arts, I recognize the importance of the play within work, especially when you are working within a creative medium, but you have this pressure within you to meet deadlines and do all of those left-brained things. So I was just so intrigued. Can you, I know there's a lot of story that goes in here, but can you start off by telling us what led to this?
What led to the Writer's Coloring Book was actually, I'm part of several online writing communities. And that I noticed amongst those communities, there was a lot of what I saw conflicting advice. And I came up with the Writer's Coloring Book, the approach of the idea being at whole brain, left brain and right brain. You know, you want to have the left brain to make sure the story's organized, that your plot moves, but right brain to be open and creative and looking for fresh ideas and to kind of find that balance. And so the exercises are designed to do just that, to take you to that happy place of just being creative and having fun and bouncing ideas around, but then also organizing them in one place so that then each exercise builds one on the other, so that one, you're also not looking for things in 5 different folders and 17 different places, but that you have everything together and that they play together nicely is the idea behind it.
Okay. Is the coloring book meant to take you through one book? Or is it meant that you would use this to structure one book and then you get another one?
You can do that because the focus is primarily with character, your main character of your story. And we use a technique like the first exercise is paper dolls. And the idea of paper dolls for grown-ups, it's like, so the idea is that we meet people where they're at, which is what they wear and the shoes and how they present themselves. And by examining that in a character, you begin to get some entree into their thought process. Why did she buy that blouse? How does she feel in that haircut? You know, those kinds of things. But the idea is that from exploring the one character, and as you go deeper into the next, the character mapping, we look at the character's ego and shadow and what they're really yearning for, and then the societies, the people who put expectations on that character. So you're really building a character world. And then from there, I say use this information to prepare for writing that first draft. Or let's say you've got a book or a screenplay or something that you've already written that's not working right. By going back to character and exploring these different areas, that will help you see where you're having problems in the storytelling process, and then can go back and refigure out what it is you want to do. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach.
So you developed this technique for yourself?
Yeah, I did. I always go back to, I read Joseph Campbell when I was in high school, and Joseph Campbell always goes back to Carl Jung. And there was a lecture that Campbell did back in like the 70s that was taped, that was released. It was called Mythos. And in the lecture, what he did was he mapped out Carl Jung's, what they call the persona system. And when I saw that, I'm like, gosh, every writer should see this, because it's the hero before the journey starts. It's the hero in his ordinary world and what makes up that ordinary world. And then why the hero would go on quest, would go, on this journey. And I actually approached the Joseph Campbell Foundation. I said, these are great graphics, can I use them? And they said, no, because it's proprietary. So I went back to rereading Jung and I created my own graphics. I created my own symbol system for each of these components. And so then you build what I call the story world mandala. And that's another thing that Jung introduced to the West, was the idea of a mandala. And what a mandala is, it's usually circular, and the idea is your mind kind of wanders around. And we have, this is an example from the book. You create a story world mandala, and each of those symbols, the triangles, the squares, the circles, there's a worksheet that asks questions related to each of those things. So by the time you get to this part of the exercise, you can fill in all this information, and here is your story world. And this is, again, like before you start writing your first draft, because there are people who, they consider themselves, you know, they write by the seat of their pants. They don't want to know about the plot, they just want to write. But at least this gives you a basic understanding of these important story components. And you may not use all of them. You may only write about one little section, but at least for you as the writer, you have this information. So let's say you're going through your draft and you realize, God, you know, I really need a subplot. I really need more information. You come back to that and go, oh, what about this connection? Because our brains are natural, the pattern recognition software that's in our brain kind of kicks in and starts to look at, oh, well, there's this relationship. What about this relationship?
Right.
And that's the whole idea.
That mandala kind of reminds me of the Einstein Quiz with the different houses. Do you know this?
I'm not real familiar with it.
It's a riddle, and he gives you very little information, and there's 5 houses, and each person in each of the houses is someone who is a different nationality. They prefer a different liquor, they prefer a different cigar, and they keep a different animal.
Okay.
And he gives you very few clues to figure out who lives in what house and what color it is and what they drink. And I, in the little work that I have done creating story, you can get really lost in that. And immediately when I saw the graphic of your mandala, I thought, oh, that's where you can put those things.
Exactly.
And also as an actor, back in high school, I remember doing an exercise where we created a character, and then you went into class, and your fellow classmates could ask you all kinds of questions, and you had to be able to come up with your questions immediately. And it may never matter to your character on stage. No one may ever ask about your oral hygiene. But it is really important as an actor. Let me say, for myself as an actor, I find it very valuable to have made that decision about how often I floss.
Oh, absolutely, because then we all sort of express ourselves in all these different various ways, and a lot of it is subconscious. And as a writer, it helps, at least for me, to make these things conscious. So like, oh yeah, he would never do this because I know this information. And one of the things that we had in that graphic, the triangles that I put in there, I have you look at different societies. And a society is any group of people that your character interacts with. So those little houses, right? And that's where you generate other characters and how they interact with the main character. And again, you may end up just writing a 2-person play, and you may never see any of these other people. But again, knowing how they have informed the main character, knowing what kind of expectations they place on the character. Because I was just re-listening to Michael Haig talks about the hero's inner journey and the outer journey. The outer journey is what we can see. This is a guy, he has a goal. We can watch him either, make the journey or fail or whatnot. But the inner journey is going from that persona system, meaning the mask that the person puts on to show the world, and that throughout the journey, the mask comes off. And at the end, you're left with that true person. And I think that those are the most intriguing stories to me, because we see so many people that invest so much in their mask. Right? The right hair, the right clothes, the right things. Well, you strip them away of all of that, their money, their beliefs, their house, their car, their everything. What do you have left?
Then what do you have?
And what do they do? Because then they reveal themselves through action, right? That's always, actions speak louder than words. So that's, again, how, to me, those are the most satisfying stories, because what it then mirrors back to me as a human being, well, who am I without my mask? Am I brave enough to just say, this is me, take it or leave it, foibles and all? Or it's like, well, no, I think I'll put that mask on today, and today I'm like trying to be a serious writer person, but I'm normally just sort of goofball, coloring book person, so.
It's always in there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the paper dolls just a little bit.
Sure.
Because that's part of the masks that we're putting on, that we all put on every day.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't, even if you think you just run out of the house with shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah, well, that's a decision, even though it's an unconscious one, or so like one of the examples, I don't know if I want to show this to the camera over, which one do you want me to? Okay, so like this is an example, it's kind of hard to see, but the idea here is this is a character, I took Little Miss Muffet and created a whole spy drama, and this is the boss lady. Right, and so then from here you would be able to color in her coat and color in her hair, but then there's a whole series of questions that are based upon those ideas. Okay, she's female. Well, how female? Is she girly girl female? Is she butch female? How does that inform her character? And the other thing too, the models that I chose are pretty perfect people. They're well proportioned. One of the first questions is, well, but we're not perfect. What are, I say the word flaws, which maybe not be correct, but are imperfections. One of the first things you want to look at is, well, is the nose a little wider? Are the hips a little wider? Is it skinny? Or, all those kinds of descriptors. Yeah. Because for writers, I think beginning writers especially, a lot of times they have a hard time distinguishing that character from themselves. And so oftentimes they have the character reacting how the writer would react, and not how the character would react. So the sooner you can see that character as a separate consciousness from yours, I think that's really a helpful way to start, when you're in that process.
And literally seeing it and having a tactile experience with it.
Exactly.
Gives you a different relationship to that character.
Yeah.
I love that you ask the question, the models have their hands out. I love that you ask the question, what is going in their hand? What do they want to, why is their hand out?
Well, think about this. If I say it's a story that has a pumpkin and some mice and a glass slipper, you can tell the story.
Yeah.
These objects have become so ingrained because of Cinderella, all those things. So you want to think about objects in a story, not only how the character reacts to that object, but how other characters react to that. So the idea is that you can create something as simple as, say, a cigar wrapper can become incredibly significant. Let's say the girl and the guy are walking on the beach and he decides, honey, I really love you, let's get married, and he finds a little cigar wrapper and uses that as the engagement ring. And she's like, oh my gosh, yes, honey, I love you. She goes back to her hotel and takes it off. The maid coming the next day sees this old ratty cigar wrapper, but so, you know what I mean? So you can create tension, you can create conflict around objects. And around how each character reacts and values these objects.
So, when I was looking at it, and I'm not an aspiring writer. Mm-hmm. I tried it. I'm not good. It's not my thing. I got things, but that's not mine. But I thought, what if I played with, and I'm going to, what if I just played with a coloring book and just let my subconscious brain answer those questions and say, if the object is, it's a safety pin, and then go from there. Is that kind of the object of it, that you free that up?
Yeah, you free that up and you think of like, what can you do with safety pins? My brain goes to the whole MacGyver thing, right? I can make a bomb, I can do this, I can do that. And then again, is my character that kind of person, right? And if so, then, how would she also express that creativity in other ways? So the whole idea is to let your brain go. And the thing about it is we are all natural storytellers, and the other thing that I looked at when I created the coloring book is, business people can use these in the sense of who is their ideal customer, right? Who is the person whose needs you're trying to meet or to anticipate? And if you look at, even the big advertising companies, like all the big insurance companies, all have characters. It's all character-driven advertising. There's Mayhem, there's Flo and her price thing. And, so each of those characters espouses the values of that company and what the company wants you to believe about their product. So that's another, we realize, people are trying to cater to our needs all over the place. And seeing us as, members of different markets and how they want to get us into using their product or into their store and things like that. So
interesting.
Really
how they
interesting.
are defining us.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we got to go to our first break.
Okay.
That kind of flew by. All right. And I didn't get a chance to tell you, you can, if you would like to join the conversation, you can tweet to ThinkTech HI, and we'll be able to see your comment and or question. We're going to go to our first break. Please stay put. I'm Donna Blanchard. This is Center Stage, and we're talking with Rachel Funk-Heller, and we'll be right back.
Here's the deal. I'm Jay Fidel. I'm the host of Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, which is the Energy Policy Forum's program on Wednesday. That's how we call Wednesday Energy Wednesday. We call it Energy Wednesday every Wednesday. Are you surprised? Okay, and we get guys like Jim Alberts here from Hawaiian Electric who can tell us what's really going on in energy. We want to be informed. It's so important. It's the most important initiative in our state. Clean energy is major, okay? And that's why we cover it on this show. That's the deal. What do you think, Sharon?
I think that's great. That's why we're here every Wednesday from 4 to 5, and we hope you all join us so we can hear people like Jim coming on our show and co-host Ray Starling from Hawaii Energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here today. You've seen this. You heard what she said. What do you think?
I think it's a tremendous opportunity for people to come together and talk about the issues. Oftentimes, there isn't a good forum to bring these key issues out into the public, and this is a tremendous way to go about it. And the activity of this show is essential to keep talking about energy because, as you said, it's such an essential part of our lives that we need to pay attention to it and we need to think about the future.
Okay, Ray, your turn.
Well, this is a special time in the history of Hawaii where we're making some pretty radical changes in the way we use energy and generate energy. And this show is the one place you can count on coming to every Wednesday and hearing something about the latest issues that are on the table, being discussed, that will affect us all going forward. So come join us, and if you have some ideas you want to share with us about energy, give us a call and let us know. We'll put you up here and let you talk for an hour. So come see us.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Jim. It's great to be, from ThinkTech's point of view, it's great to have this show. We love the show. It's our most important show. So come around and listen to us 4 to 5 on Wednesday. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Hi, we're back. This is Center Stage on the ThinkTech Hawaii digital series. And I'd like to let you know we are broadcasting at Pioneer Plaza in downtown Honolulu. And if you would ever like to join us in our brand new beautiful studio, please do email jay@thinktechhawaii.com. That's Jay at thinktechhawaii.com. And you can be one of our guests. We're back. We're talking with Rachel Funk-Heller. And so here's what I would like to do next in our little journey here. First of all, I want to mention that Mark Ward, who is a strategist, says that he actually uses a similar concept to help people see the trajectory of their life and the calling they may be trying to express. And it's a very, thank you for chiming in on Twitter, Mark. It's a very useful tool for a lot of us, a lot of pieces of us, as an actor, as a business person, just as someone who needs a little bit of an escape or need to express themselves creatively. So let's talk about you, can we? Because then I think that's going to inform more of our conversation going forward, because this is very, very unique. So I'm thinking that you are too.
Well, okay. And it's interesting because I came to novel writing started my career as a journalism major. And what they drum into you immediately is, why is this news? What about these events or this person? What is news? What is this? What's the story? The who, what, when, where, and why. But when you learn to write for broadcast, which is what I was learning to do at CNN, and you write those news stories, which you read all the time. A news story is 5 sentences. There was a fire today in Palolo and blah, blah, and on and on. Well, how do you turn that into a novel? It's like it's a big stretch. And everything that I was seeing around other writers that I respected, they always came back to character. And what I found missing in the process, though, was being a TV producer, you're in charge of everything. And no one was really talking to writers in that sense of, you're creating this world, you are in charge of everything. But there's stages to that. So in what we call pre-production, right, this is where you would do all these worksheets. This is your pre-production phase. You haven't started writing that first draft. You're in the planning process. And what I found in pre-production, the more you could get down on paper, the more problems you could kind of get a sense of what you might come across, the more kind of creative problem solving you can do there, the better off you were when you actually were in the studio, when you had lights and cameras and you're spending money on crew and all of that. For me, that's the writing the first draft is your production phase, because now you're completely focused in that world. You're hearing people talk in your head, you're watching the movie in your own brain, and you're just focused on getting that story out. It's like I say, it's the writer is telling yourself the story. You know, you can plan, you can do some outlining ahead of time, but until you really dive in there and watch the story unfold, because then new characters show up, new subplots show up. Then once you know the story, you know, you may think you started out as telling a story about a nice little old lady, but it turns out she's got a son who's, you know, MI5, and you know, it's like, oh, that's the story. Then from there, post-production is where you take all the things you shot and design it for your viewer. How are you going to bring your audience into this story? And it's a whole different set of problems and a different set of tools. So am I going to use creative, you know, I'm going to create things with time. I'm going to start in the middle of the story and then backtrack to the beginning and then give you a little more of the end. You know, all those kinds of things that you see in TV series all over the place, in different plays and all kinds of movies that do that. Well, to do that well, you have to know the story ahead of time.
Right.
If you try to do that from the beginning, you're like, well, wait, you know, wait, that doesn't really work.
You can really get lost in if you're trying to do Memento or Oculus.
Exactly. Yeah, from reverse engineer that. So that's another thing that like I said, I saw missing in the literature about how to put a novel together and how to do this kind of creative storytelling.
How did you go from, speaking of story, you were studying journalism?
I was actually working at CNN. I worked in the Atlanta bureau, and then I worked in Washington, D.C. You know, I had pursued the dream. Here was the big dream, and only to discover, oh, wrong dream.
It really wasn't doing it for you?
I even have journal entries at the time. I was like, journalist, artist, and I really figured out that I wanted to be an artist, and what was missing was the self-confidence. And as I, you know, went through and started writing novels and started, you know, making all those mistakes, one of the big ones was, I have something to say. You know, I have this important thing I have to say. And the problem with writing a story like that is then all the characters sound like you. They don't sound like real people, and they're just, you know, mouthpieces for your grand philosophy. And it's like, well, that kind of sucks. Yeah. So back to the drawing board and back to character. And that's when I came back to Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung and looking at these components, the ego and the shadow, and how we project these out onto other people. That's how, as humans, we deal with all the stuff that's in our subconscious. And so when I saw that, it's like, oh, well, what's a great way to create an antagonist? If you read Jung and he talks about the shadow are those fears or those unresolved issues. And so every now and then you'll meet someone in real life and you meet them like, God, I just can't stand that person. And the reason is they're mirroring something about you that you're not ready to deal with. So like, oh, what a great way to create an antagonist for a character.
Just look at the shadows.
Yeah, put that mirror right in front of them and force them to deal with that. So that was one of the reasons I was like, oh yeah, so when you know character, when you really explore, then you begin to see how all these other pieces can come together and create a really deep and really rich story experience.
That moves itself forward kind of nicely, I would imagine, once you make these decisions. Here's your figure 1A in our story world.
Okay, so like I said, going back to Jung, he talks about the ego, and Joseph Campbell chose the square to symbolize the ego because human beings make squares all the time. We're looking at a rectangular screen, and buildings are squares, and you don't see too many squares in nature. So the idea was an ego, a conscious mind, created these things. So then we have the shadow, and the shadow is another square behind the ego. And the idea, if you look at it, think of the shadow elements poking out behind, like they're coming out saying, hello, pay attention to me. They're just, they're making themselves known. The next one, when you go, so now the circle is something I called yearning. We all have a yearning for something more, something deeper, something that we really want to connect with, but we often either don't think we're good enough, or we don't think we have the ability, or other things become more important. And then around that, there's one more. So now you put a border around that. And that's the symbol for the persona. And the persona, again, is that mask that we put on. It comes from acting. From the ancient Greeks, they would wear a mask to be the god or the king. And we all put on masks, right, in public because of certain expectations.
True.
Right? If I came in here, with a feather boa and, a showgirl outfit, you're like,
I so wish you would have.
damn. Next time, I promise. You'd have it like, well, wait a minute, who is she showing to the world? And like I said, some of the most compelling stories that I see, it's like, I want to see behind the mask. I want to see who that person really is. And when we see that in literature and plays and the movies we watch, what it does is, as humans, it gives us that opportunity to see, oh, well, maybe I can, peel away some of those layers. And maybe I can be willing to stand up for myself and be who I really am. And that was what I encountered with the whole being a journalist. I had spent so much time creating a persona journalist of what I thought that life was going to be. Turns out it wasn't the life I wanted. So that's when I had to, take a step back and reevaluate and say, well, what's the next life that I want? And put my energy towards that. And then along the way, as I was teaching myself how to do this, I was like, I think other people might find this interesting. And so that's what was the impetus behind writing the writer's coloring book.
That's fabulous. Yeah, I always loved playing the bad characters, because they're not trying to be bad people. They're just people who have
they're the hero.
Yearning, they have that whole
they're the hero of their own story.
Right.
It's just that their motivation is usually something we value as being less than. They're like, either they want it for the fame or the money or the glory, whereas the hero is going, so I want the fame, I'm the bad guy, I'm going to blow up this building because then I'll be notorious. And so the hero is there to stop you. But if it weren't for the bad guy, the hero wouldn't have a job. So that's why some of the most interesting stories, and the one I always come back to is Die Hard, was really fascinating because the hero and the villain were pretty much matched. They're both smart, they could both talk a good story, they both had a skill set. But one wanted to blow up the building and steal the money, and the other one was like, no, that's not good.
You really shouldn't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's another part of the exploration about a lot of times interesting stories. I was just thinking about that. You can have people who are opponents that it's just that the roles they play in life makes them being against each other. Like there was actually a TV show in the 70s called Adam's Rib. It's a married couple, they're both attorneys, and they ended up being in court together for opposite sides. So here they are fighting two sides of an argument, yet at home they're married. So how do you do that? And that was a basis for some really interesting drama because it was like taking the court scene outside and what did they really think, but when I'm the attorney and have my attorney persona, I have to do something else, So it's always looking for opportunities to create more tension, to create more conflict, because again, that's what tests people. How they react under pressure, how they react under this set of circumstances. And so a lot of times, beginning writers, that's one of the hardest things that they learn, to learn. It's like, well, I like these people. It's like, yeah, I like them too. But to create a really good story, you've got to put them through a really awful situation. Yeah.
Well, and the best stories, and I think the best plays, and we do a lot of shows at Kumukuhui Theater that you find yourself not liking someone, and then you realize, oh, that's your favorite character in the story after they move through everything they go through, and you realize they're but for the grace of God.
Absolutely.
I would have made those decisions, because it all lives inside all of us. How fun to explore. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go to our next break. See, that flew by too. So please stick around. We will be right back with our interesting conversation. I'd like to talk a little bit more about Carl Jung's theory, and we're here talking with Rachel von Keller. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia, and by Asia we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Hi, I'm Chris Leatham, and I'd like to invite you to come and watch my show every Wednesday at 3. I'm interested in a variety of issues that have to do with politics and our local business economy. And I'd like to bring on guests who like to talk about everything from technology to social media to what we can be doing to improve our environment. And so I'd like to invite you every Wednesday at 3 to stay and watch my show here with ThinkTech Hawaii. And I'll see you there.
Hi, we're back. This is Center Stage on the ThinkTech Hawaii digital series. We're coming to you from Pioneer Plaza in the heart of downtown Honolulu. And I'm sorry, sound was my hair hitting the microphone. I'm Donna Blanchard, and I do not take responsibility for my hair today. I'm talking with Rachel Funk-Heller, who has written the Writer's Coloring Book, which we have right here. So you self-published this.
Mm-hmm. I did.
Let's talk about that world.
Okay.
Because that's a big bite.
It's a big, big change in the world of, publishing and distributing information. And the reason I did was because I actually, when I started putting this together, again, it's for visual thinkers like me, and all these different, symbols and the paper dolls and all of this. And I approached a New York literary agent, and he looked at the prototype. He said, "You'll have a hard time finding a publisher because having this many graphics is really time consuming." And I thought, and I really want it to look the way I want it to look, because I want to design these exercises to do, as I mentioned, that each one builds on the other. So I, binged watched lynda.com to get my head back into InDesign. And I slowly but surely used my mad skills and put the book together. Crazy hair-pulling moments, but it was really worth it because I created the book that I wanted. So you can purchase this as a PDF from writerscoloringbook.com. And that's really how I designed it. So then you download it to your computer, you can read it, and then you print out as many of these as you want for as many books as you're going to write, if it's going to be a series, if it's going to be whatever. It's yours to make, use the tools in the way that you want to do it. I did the print version through CreateSpace and Amazon because a lot of people still want to have a physical book. Yeah. And although in the book there is a link to the website to get a PDF of just the worksheets. So again, you can print out the mandala, you can do, like I said, as many of these character explorations as you want. And again, the benefit there is, with self-publishing, is you can create the book the way you want to. There are things that normally, if you get a traditional book deal, things like editing and cover design and all of that, as a self-publisher, you really have to put on your publisher hat. You really have to look at your project as, I am now an independent business operator. What is my budget? How much can I afford to spend with an artist to do a great cover? What are all the things that I need to put together, like buying your own ISBN numbers, paying for editors, all these different things, which a lot of writers don't really take into their consciousness. They think, oh, it's all about writing the book. It's like, well, yes, but then it's all about who are you writing the book for? Who is your market? Understanding marketing is different from publicity, is different from promotion. So it's like several tracks at once. You're not only writing the book, you're looking at the business world, you're looking at what else is happening in publishing, you're looking at what is happening within the world of Kindle and Nook and all these different things and all these different outlets. So, but if you're the kind of person who's a little bit of a control freak, like me, it's a really viable option. So.
Have you thought about the only thing that occurs to me, and I'm one of these people who I try to eschew paper in issue, not issue. eschew paper in every form of my life I possibly can. Have you thought about doing something like this that's online, that you cut out pieces and put them together and color them?
You know, I thought about that, but I like the idea, and there's a science called haptics, which is how you interact with things using your hands, cutting out the paper, pasting it on, filling out the form. It gets to that different part of your brain. And it gets to that playful part of it. Yeah, we could certainly down the road do an app, which would have all those features. But at this point, I do really like the idea of, again, to be able to print out what you need, to be able to interact with these things, and again, to have them all in one place.
Yeah.
I think that interaction is really an important part of the process. That's the coloring book side of it, that right brain,
I gotcha. Well, and the tactile part of it does appeal to me, even with the harsh way that I am about paper. But I'm also, when it comes to creative stuff, I will occasionally get out a legal pad and just to have to resort to that.
Well, the impetus of this, whenever I started writing a new novel, I would always grab the biggest blank piece of paper that I could, because I was like, I want to see these relationships. I want to see this character. I want to do this. I want to do that. One of the first things I was working on was a murder mystery. So it's like, there's clues, there's a killer, there's a victim, where do they all fit? And that was the impetus behind creating that story world mandala. So I wanted to see, oh, this guy's here and this guy's here, and he doesn't like her because of this, and all those relationships, and then to be able to keep track of them. So yeah.
If I had my way, if I owned my apartment, I would probably paint all of my walls with that whiteboard paint. I could keep
lots of
track of my
markers.
life that way. Is it an expensive venture to do something like this, to decide I really want to get this book out there? So
it all depends on understanding the different parts of the book. So and it also depends on what you're writing. If you're writing a novel, you seriously want to look at having an independent editor look at your work, either from a developmental stage, which is the story working? Do I have the plot lines lined up? Or just from a line edit stage, which is, okay, I'm writing in third person point of view. Am I consistent with that? Am I telling where I should be showing? Those kinds of things. Because you really need another set of eyes.
Yeah.
You really need that knowledgeable set of eyes. But some of those things, like you can form a writer's group. You can all work together sharing your information, because people know a good story when they hear it. They can tell you, well, that's really not working, or maybe you ought to look at this to make sure your story works. And then from there, again, looking to what is your market? Are you writing a romance? What category of romance? What kind of covers do they use? Look around at what everybody else is doing within that world, and then make those decisions. We still judge books by their cover.
Yeah.
And I tell you, you can go on Amazon right now, and you can find a bunch of really ugly self-published looking covers, but people are becoming more savvy, and you can find artists all over the place who are willing to do book jacket design and understand it is a design issue, because what you're trying to do is sell the book, not sell the artist's work. And I've seen that happen too, where it's like, here's the beautiful art, and here's the title of the book here, and here's the title of the author. It's like, you want the title, because when you see this on Amazon, it's squished down to something teeny tiny, right?
Yeah,
So
and if you're looking at it on a Kindle, it's black and white.
Exactly. So those are, all of that goes into consideration of being a savvy business person. This is your business. So treat it that way. Take it seriously in terms of what people are doing and where you want to, land in that marketplace. So.
Gotcha. So that it could vary really widely.
It can vary
what kind
very
of investment
widely.
you make.
Yeah.
Do you have novels that you've published as well?
Not yet, but soon.
You've created a tool for yourself to use to do
Absolutely. What I'm doing now, actually, as we speak, is I have a screenplay that I wrote in 1999. Abandoned it because it kept getting worse and worse and worse. Took it up in 2004, rewrote it as a novel, still wasn't right. Now that I know what I'm doing, that was that I have something to say book. And I found, no, these are characters, and this is a world, and this is what we're doing. So that's what I'm doing next, is I'm revising that novel. And then after I release that one, it's called In Persephone's Garden. It's an artist on a vision quest. It's crazy, but I love it. Then I have a murder mystery series that's set here in Hawaii, which right now the working title is Deadly Hula Hands. But it's kind of a 3-part, very much, I like the kind of mystery that ends up unraveling, a cover-up that unravels and unravels and unravels. And what I know now, having done this, I've written storylines that could be the first 2 books, but I don't have the real deep, dark secret for the 3rd book, which I need to have, right? So then I can make sure that the first 2 books scan right, that it leads to that big, dark secret.
Oh, gotcha.
And again, that's that design phase. That's how do I want to design each of those reading experiences to build one on the other, to make it a really satisfying experience for the reader.
I just heard something on HPR yesterday. Someone was talking about there's a new 007 script that's been found, a novel that's been found, they're putting together, because what's his name? Fleming has been dead for 50 years.
Yeah.
But they were saying, one of the points they brought up with is we don't know what kind of music James Bond listens to. When he goes home alone, what does he do? Does he put on his fuzzy slippers and listen to Bach or nocturnes?
Beethoven?
Yeah, where's he going? Yeah.
Or AC/DC, who knows?
And we don't need to know that.
No.
But I wonder if Ian Fleming knew that or probably had some idea. He probably would have been able to answer the questions about James Bond's dental hygiene.
Probably, at least, or at least have some clue, how persnickety was
breath.
he? He had to have good breath, because all those women, right?
I really like to assume that. I like to assume that. So you have, it kind of amazes me that you say you have 4 different novels that you're working on right now.
Yeah, well, I can only really work on one at a time, but in the process of writing this, in the process of trying to figure out how to make those books work, is where I learned all these different techniques that I put in the coloring book. It's really I don't know what I'm doing. How do I do this? And how do I do it in a way that my brain can wrap itself around?
Yeah.
And that was really why I did it. And I really love writers. I have a writers group, and I just really love writers. It's hard work. Writing is hard work. When you set out to write a novel, you think, oh, okay, a 26-mile marathon. I'll train for that, and we'll do these trainings, and I'll meet every Sunday with my friends, and there you go. And you start the race, and 10 miles in, you're like, oh, dang, I'm in a 150-mile ultra marathon, and I don't see that finish line. Because when you start getting into it and understanding all these different things you've got to master, not only voice and point of view and vocabulary and sentence structure and paragraph structure and chapter structuring and plotting and subplotting and all those things, right? So it's I wanted to create something to make it at least feel like it's a little bit easier.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. I've often thought about that, just syntax.
Yeah.
How differently.
Exactly. If you're writing in third-person point of view for 3 different characters, the vocabulary for each one is going to be different, right? If one character is the snooty upper-class Englishman, his vocabulary is different than, the girl from Jersey, right? If they're in the same book, And so those are things you want to think about as a writer.
And what we love are the characters who say something completely unexpected.
Exactly.
What? If you could do that, then that's
and pull it off, okay.
Yeah.
That was when I tried reading Poe when I was younger, I could not get past his vocabulary. I was like, I'm not ready for this.
Yeah. Yeah, vocabulary. And there's some people like Lois Ann Yamanaka writes with such, her heart is out there on the page for you to read, and that's a whole nother.
It's a whole nother, also a whole nother approach, because there are those writers don't give me anything like this. I just want to, come from the heart and from the gut and just put it out there and put it out there, which I also tried. For me, I tried that. Just get a notebook and write. I get up at 4:30 in the morning and light a candle and just write for 2 hours and by hand and the whole thing. And problem was I couldn't read my own handwriting, and I didn't know what I was doing. So, you have to find what works for you.
Yeah.
And it's like any new skill. At first, it's going to be weird because you're trying to make it conscious, like driving a car. It's like, okay, the gas, the car, the windshield, the whatever, but eventually it becomes so ingrained, it becomes unconscious.
Thank you so much for coming here. Thank you so much for writing the book.
You're welcome.
I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see your next books.
Thank you.
And we'll have you back when you're ready with those.
Awesome.
Thank you so very much for being here. We're glad that you watched Center Stage this week. We're here every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. I would also like to thank Zuri Bender, who is in my ear. She's the overlord of the studio. I'd like to thank Sachi Slomoff, our floor manager, who's right over there. Thank you, Sachi. And Jay Fidel, who somehow manages to put it all together. We will see you next week here on Center Stage.